This is the Chrysalis Colour Analysis Podcast. Your hosts are Christine Skaman of 12 Blueprints
and Jorun Harness of Nordic Simplicity.
We are color analysts, and we talk about how color can help you love the way you look.
We aim for publishing a new episode roughly once a month, but the best way to make sure you don't miss out on an episode is to subscribe to Chrysalis Colour Analysis on your preferred podcast app.
Hello and welcome to episode 48, Neutral Combinations for Spring. We did autumn back in March and winter in January and summer in May, I think it was, yeah. At the end, we signed off for the summertime, and then we turned around and decided why not keep going for our spring listeners.
Hi, everyone. Inspiration for this series came from a listener who asked about color combinations for winters using neutral colors only. We loved the idea and the challenge of creating with neutrals alone, so we continued the series. Jorun, what is your favorite thing about spring neutrals?
That they don't have to use neutrals. No, really, that was a little off topic. We are definitely going to talk about spring neutrals, but really, as I was thinking about this episode, I kept coming back to the fact that the superpower of springs is they look so fantastically natural when they use their colors. So I feel a little bad for devoting an entire episode to building outfits for spring using only neutrals. To be honest, I feel that only being confined to neutrals would be selling springs a little short, if you know what I mean.
Well, maybe you've helped define our mission for today. The initial question back in January from our winter listener was inspired by how gorgeous her spring friend looked wearing palette neutrals. And one thing for me that's really come from this series is how different the neutrals outfits would be in the 4-season groups. I'd never really solidified that they're very different from one another. And however we picture the neutrals for one season, because we started with winter, and it was like erase that, shake up the Etch-a-Sketch, and then start again for the next season, and you build this whole different picture. And so as we thought about what spring can do to create an appearance that is that inspiring, it came to me that springs don't really look like they're wearing neutrals even when they are, besides their gray, which looks as elegant and versatile as the right gray does for anybody. But it might be the only one someone else, a viewer, might interpret as a neutral color.
That's very true. Because they do have neutrals, and maybe some of them aren't kind of classified as neutrals, except the gray, as you say, but those are their neutrals. And sure, they can use them, and especially so in professional settings, I think. Back to my favorite thing about spring neutrals is how radiantly juicy they are. It's like the neutrals are dipped in orange juice, sprinkled with sugar, and drenched in sunshine.
Wow, that sounds really good when you say it.
Yummy.
Really good, yeah. We don't really think of neutral colors as glowing and radiant, though the person wearing them is. But for spring, these really are luminous colors. And we could make it sound technical and say clear yellow light beams out of the colors, but that's not really as evocative as your description. And probably not even as easy to picture in stores. And it's hard to imagine it for some of the neutral colors, like the darker ones. Light doesn't really beam out of darker colors. So to me, spring neutrals, part of what distinguishes them is how dark they don't get, or how much color pigment they do have compared with other seasons neutrals. And the grays always seem kind of greenish, like French gray, drenched in sunshine isn't my first impression of those colors.
Well, I love the way you said that the spring dark and neutrals are more distinct by how dark they don't get. I think I do agree with that. And I'm imagining a gray suit for a spring at the office. It would be, well, as you know me, I think it would be better worn with a color next to it, more than just adding a spring color in lipstick. But the other neutrals they have at their disposal are actually very rich and colorful and can be used in a blouse. For example, a blouse in a peach smoothie or soft cashew color.
That smoothie analogy is really good. That's just fantastic. What about spring challenges with neutrals? What do you think those would be?
Well, I think knowing how to identify their spring neutrals, because if you make the mistake of just isolating and comparing one spring neutral to one autumn neutral, at first glance they might look alarmingly similar. And here's where we need to do harmonizing. What I did was I spread out the neutral strips of all the 3 springs, and then I fanned out the neutral strips of all the 3 autumns, and I just looked at them. And that's when the differences emerge. I think learning to distinguish their neutrals from the autumn neutrals is really, really important and a big challenge.
Agree. It is a big challenge. And yes, to your point of just sit and look at them. Because once your mind just quiets down, the answers just come to you. Recognizing spring neutrals, spring from autumn, spring in general, it took some time for me as well. For every season, some things come easy, some need to be learned. It's like one side of your body stretches easily and the other one is stiffer. Be patient with yourself and start, I think, with what someone else has already figured out. There's a link in the show notes to a YouTube video on how to wear spring colors. Another thing that came to me over doing this podcast is that many spring neutrals do have similar versions in autumn. It's like you say, it makes sense. They're both warm types of coloring, but they're so colorful for spring that in the palettes, you might actually find them among the colors. Meaning the colors of autumn. What I'm saying is if you take a spring neutral, try to put it in an autumn palette, it's too colorful. There's too much color pigment to fit into the neutrals. You might find something closer over among the colors. And then the reverse applies at times too. Autumn colors can serve as spring neutrals.
Mm-hmm. I can actually see that happening. Yes. So the main question is, how can spring identify their neutrals when shopping in real life in a real department store? So you're in a store and there are khakis, browns, grays, warm beiges. How do you find the spring versions of these? I think for me, thinking in keywords is one way. Spring neutrals give me a feeling of juicy and peachy, and autumn neutrals, they seem dry and sandy.
I use keywords too when I shop. It just gives me kind of a bigger perspective on where things probably belong. I also try to imagine the color in a wet or a shiny variation. Like dewy spring color, somehow it's easy to picture. Dewy autumn color, say brick or curry, it's kind of odd. You can't really picture it. So I try to see the color in a flower arrangement. And often autumn neutrals would slide right into a dried flower arrangement, grass, twigs, oats, barley. It's ready for harvest. I'm not sure I have an easy analogy for spring, though, or not one that you could just easily apply. What you said about peachy, that's good.
Well, I just thought of something when you said this. If autumn neutrals could blend nicely into a dried flower arrangement, could spring neutrals be said to blend nicely into a bowl of fruit?
Yeah, there's absolutely something there. Fruit salad, that's one I've heard, but I find it too bright and shiny, like almost artificial. Maybe I'm thinking of North American fruit salad from a can, but even if it's just fresh cut up fruit, it's not quite natural looking. And I like your bowl of fruit because it gives more variety. You've got natural textures and colors. It creates a more complete world.
Good point. Because whole fruits, you'd have peel, you'd have leaves and skins and stems. And that's an important part of it, as opposed to a fruit salad that's peeled and cut up pieces of fruit. But I know from before that thinking in landscapes is your forte, Christine, and you chose the thumbnail image for today's episode. And for those who are listening without having seen that image, it's a gorgeous photo of ripe peaches on a branch with the sunlight playing on the fruit and leaves. That's the image.
I do exactly what you said before with the palettes. I just look at it. I just kind of relax my mind and the ideas come to me. And I'm sure they would for you as well, for anyone. The first thing I see is the color of the light. I see this a lot because I find it interesting to think about what color paint would an artist use to recreate that color of white? Because it's very rarely just pure white in a natural image. This is peachy white. And in this picture, there's no white or black anywhere. I mean, just imagine some of those leaves in white or black. They would never settle in. And then what I see is shadows don't really get dark. They're dark enough to make a three-dimensional image, but Autumn does that even more. There's more distance between foreground and background. Autumn's objects look rounder, but you wouldn't see knife edges in spring or in autumn. There's nothing sudden, no sudden color transitions, even at high contrast. And it's particular with spring how light penetrates, how the dark part of objects is still sunlit, like there's sunshine in the shade. It's kind of like you were saying about orange juice beaming out and in all the colors. And if you, our listeners, are thinking, well, now that's just great to describe a landscape, but how do you make all this happen in outfits? You don't have to. Your mind is wired to see it with these particular colors. The other thing I see in this picture is texture play without extremes. I don't see metallic, oily, rough like a rock face in that picture. The colors aren't really candy or synthetic. Like picture something neon colored in the peach image. Be an outsider, right? Maybe for bright spring, metallic or high shine could be fantastic for neutrals. And then what else comes to me? Those leaf greens in the peach trees. They're warm, but they're not earthy greens. I have often tried to find the words to help recognize earthy when out shopping or to help a client or a listener, but I've never really feel I've got there. Earthy means muted plus orange or brown, but it seems so technical. Do you have a way of thinking about that?
Well, for me, something to read as earthy, it would have to have brown in it or rust, which is just another way of saying muted or orange, I guess.
Does the visual actually help you when you're shopping?
Well, it definitely helps to think warm but not earthy, because spring browns have so much yellow in them. All the spring neutrals have a fresh, well, we've said orange juicy aspect.
Yes.
As opposed to bringing up associations with soil, which is what rust would bring up in my mind, at least.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said there, warm but not earthy. I mean, that's basically it, isn't it? I use brightness in pigment, as in pigment concentration. When I'm shopping, sometimes earthy, I'm not sure. I can't quite get with the analogies, but I can tell amount of pigment. And I look for lots of color and less visible gray, which I think holds true with a lot of spring type neutrals. They're very colorful.
Well, speaking as the chief simplifier of this team, and there's no need to overcomplicate this. Trust yourself. If they give you the feeling that they would look at home in a bowl of fruit and not like someone stuck a dried flower between the peaches and bananas, then go for it. And test how your colors would look next to them. If the colors are too hoppy or bouncy next to a neutral, then it's mostly then that neutral would mostly be leaning more into autumn territory. But if the neutrals look like peach juice and the colors look good, just use it. Don't overthink it, especially if it's in bottoms like skirts and trousers. If you're picking out a turtleneck in a neutral color, you'd have to be more picky, I guess.
I'm still dwelling back here on this what is a muted neutral or a clear neutral? And I'm thinking about the difference between green olives and green tea. In some spring palettes, there might be olive looking colors, And the autumn version might work, but the green tea version has a different quality. Like it's a green gold infusion. You can see the bottom of the teacup. And then Bright Spring has this very cool kind of intense olive that we'll talk about. It's like more like swamp water green than olive, let's say.
Well, you certainly pick your images. Now, swamp water green, that would give a feeling of transparency, just like your green tea analogy. But olive green would feel more solid. I get that. I get that.
You do? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Green
do.
tea is different, right?
It is. It is very different. The translucency of it. Yeah.
Something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if it were opaque, maybe if it were like velvet colored, but there's a lot of pigment in the infusion.
It would be.
Olive, there's just more gray.
Right. And opaque. And
yeah, like green tea, there's no gray. However, clear or light or dark, you don't see a lot of gray.
True.
I'm stuck on this.
Yeah,
Moving on. Move us on, Joran.
Yes, well, green tea. Let's recap.
Yes.
Green tea. I would think spring, not autumn. Let that be the conclusion, and we're moving on. And also maybe transparency of the fabric would help too.
Sure does, yeah.
The actual fabric, like chiffon versus velvet. But also the actual color, how the color makes you feel. We're not mentioning. We're done. No more green tea. No more swamp water.
All right. Here's another thing I really noticed in the peach image was that every color just doesn't need to be season perfect for the image to come together. That a bit of variation looks a lot more real. And I think we could point to all sorts of images or looks, outfits, and point to slightly out of palette colors. It just doesn't serve. I don't think harmony as a concept is entirely about fitting into a chart or not. Those might be ways of organizing color that humans invented. And it's a very good place to start. That technical harmony, it kind of keeps everybody on the same page talking about the same thing. And for any classification system, you got to have that or the thing won't hold together. But creative harmony seems to me a lot more fluid and permissive and individual than that.
That's kind of what I meant when I blabbered on earlier about the way the color feels. I'm going to remember the expression creative harmony. It's a great description, and it sounds a lot more professional than feeling.
Well, sounding too professional, people drop off the vine and I don't know what it means. But unless I think creative harmony, maybe that's how individuality and creativity are expressed within a clothing classification system. Because I don't think of either of us believing every person in a season needs the same closet. A question I ask myself too is, could this item of clothing, jewelry, whatever it is you want to wear, hang off the branches of the peach tree in that light, in that picture, and just fit in fine? And with neutrals, I think it's even freer than with colors.
Right. Well, clothing hanging off a branch on a peach tree. There's that landscape image. I love it.
What do we not want the neutrals to look like? Because sometimes I think it does help to prove the negative, especially when you're trying to understand something that feels a little further out of reach or less obvious. What doesn't work? Well, it shouldn't look faded. And if you're not sure, do what Joran said earlier, put them next to the colors. Spring neutrals won't fade next to spring colors. Autumn neutrals will.
So which neutrals are easier to distinguish in your opinion, Christine?
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. For me, the lighter ones. I can see the yellow light in the spring neutral seasons, light spring, bright spring. They're both warm neutrals. Cooler than the main season of true spring. It's harder to see the yellow light, but you can see it enough to know we're not talking about light summer or bright winter, the further out, cooler neighbors, because these colors would be too warm or too yellow for light summer or bright winter. What do you think?
Well, I'm kind of keeping that peachy beige, those ones as favorites, because they're so definitely spring.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, I like that. But what about the harder ones? I think it's the one that's most difficult is khakis because they're so confused with autumn. Autumn has kind of grown to have like a monopoly of khakis, but that's not true. There is a lovely khaki,
Yes.
several that harmonize with spring, but it's easily confused with autumn. But another easy one is the milk chocolate brown. That's kind of easy to spot.
Yeah. For me, gray is challenging, both in spring and in autumn. I can usually tell the gray is not autumn because it's greener rather than redder, which autumn grays can be, except for soft autumn. And there the softness is useful because soft autumn grays can also be greenish. Darker browns and greens also a little harder to distinguish, but you can use this to your advantage by wearing some of autumn's medium to dark options, medium to medium dark, let's say. It's only with autumn that spring neutrals can be confused, I think. Before we get into the seasons, I wanted to mention a great question from a viewer on YouTube to the Met Gala video that posted recently, and I'll put a link in the show notes. I had commented about maroon as an autumn neutral combination with candlelight beige, and the viewer asked where to find this color in her autumn palette. I think she had true autumn. Well, when I said it, I was thinking of an autumn dark brown, which can have burgundy properties, although their basic brown doesn't really. I should have specified that this in the video. So thank you for asking. Depending on your palette, you might find it among the darker reds, or you might find it among the dark neutrals in a corporate or a business palette, or you might not find the color in the palette at all, since some don't include many browns for autumns.
Mm. Well, which would be a great place to insert that you can use so much more colors, so many more colors than the ones shown in your palette, as long as they're in harmony with your fan.
Yeah, that's really very true. And it brought up a great question. What qualifies as a neutral? Who says? I never feel confined to the neutral strips of the palette. As you say, those are decisions that are made by each palette designer. They depend on space and many, many other factors. Well, this is just a me thing. It is not a strength or a skill, but ask me about one thing, and I guarantee you I will be thinking about another thing. Ask me to shop for blue, and you are going to find me over by the yellows. Tell me these are your neutrals. I'm going to flip right over to the colors. I think Joran could attest to working with me can be this way.
That's what makes it so fun to talk to you.
Yeah, yes. Yes, it's a multi-directional experience. Now, I'm glad that in the palettes I've seen over the years, the whites, taupes, grays, blacks, browns, they're grouped together rather than like picture if they were sprinkled through the palette with the colors. I see the purpose of grouping them together, find logic in the neutrals. You can look at them, you can isolate them from the other colors because our eye is so attracted to color that it would be kind of easy to skip over the neutrals and not learn all that they have to teach us. And it's handy for harmonizing, of course, to work with those strips alone. Same with the reds alone, the greens alone. And actually the NDU colors harmony palettes, link will be in the show notes. They do show neutrals and colors side by side. Very, very handy to see it both ways. And then for seasons like where neutrals and colors are poles apart, like winter, I wouldn't see any color acting as a neutral, except maybe red in the sense that our blush is a neutral. I mean, I am going out here. You tell me to look for neutrals. I'm looking at red, but I wear the same cosmetic blush color every single day. So I get it's a stretch. It depends on the item and the texture. Red lipstick, red gloss, clothing, they're not really neutral in the sense of kind of blending in so completely, but blush sort of is. And for seasons where neutrals have distinct color, like spring, or seasons where neutrals and colors are very close, the softer seasons, we talked about that in our summer episode. Well, I would easily see using some colors as neutrals, even if they don't fit into the chart or the palette strips that way.
Well, I'm intrigued by what you said about red being a possible neutral, especially for winters, because this is one of my things. All human skin has warm qualities. Even if you have one of the cooler skin tones, your skin will have some red in it. I'm very pink in my English, come on. Pink in my cheeks. Lips, very, very red. Whereas a person with dark skin tones might have burgundy natural blush tones to their faces, not pink as I have. And that's how I see that you could define red as a neutral, some kind of red that's in your skin. Well, you could argue that every color is in your skin, I know, but yeah, well, we can see blue and green, the visible veins of our arms and such, but I'm not sure. Well, maybe we'll return to this another time. It just got me thinking.
Yeah, well, it's fun to speculate, right? Because I read an interesting quote that science doesn't bring us truths. I'm paraphrasing here, I might not have exact, but is that science doesn't just deliver us truths. It brings us to better questions. And with better questions, we find better answers. I thought that was brilliant. And I would love to attribute it to whoever said it, but I'm sorry, I don't remember. So I'm not sure either about red as a blush. And, we don't need to know. We need a system that holds together to help us buy stuff in harmony with the colors in us. And you can buy sets of 12 neutrals as fabrics. Start with what someone else has already figured out. Very handy to hold in your hand as you shop. That's what solved not neutral shopping for me. I just could not get it right. But if I had that fabric in my hand, it would just pull me to things in the store. And the sets include the traditional palette neutrals or anything that I feel acts as a neutral. Like winter has a kind of dark metallic avocado, spring has teal, autumn has teal. Others might disagree about some of the colors being neutrals, and that's fine. There's a time and a place where rules are helpful. And then when they're limiting, maybe both are true most of the time, come to think of it. And then there's just a time when you stand up and say, yeah, well, I see it this way, because there isn't a wrong or right. And seeing the world through your eyes, through everybody's eyes, that's something I cherish. It really opens my mind because we all have blind spots. We have ruts, we have habits, we have tunnel vision. And out on my limb here, I'll say that palettes can sometimes become a bit of a rut. Well, it goes back to what you just said. There are so many more colors that could look beautiful. And some folks feel freer to explore the world inside rules and structures. I feel freer with some rules, just enough lines so I can make out the structure. Then I like to make it up from there. Like how few lines would it take you to draw a plant and still make out the plant? I think you're like me. I don't find you rule bound, but I don't find you dismissive of the structure either.
No, I think structure is useful because, like you say, it kind of it's a scaffolding to bring us onwards, and we can choose to look at the palette as a collection of hard and fast ultimate rules, or we can view it as a vision of possibilities and then see where that leads us.
That is awesome. A vision of possibilities. I'd like to have that put on a t-shirt or maybe a tattoo. And, like, think of me as a vision of possibilities.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, well, we all are, aren't we? Yeah. And I don't worry about where in the particular palette the color's found or whether fashion might qualify it as a neutral this year, because color is just more elastic than that. And that might feel disorganized or random for many. Repeating myself, just saying, make it work for you. I don't try to be Yorin. She doesn't try to be me, but we both look better, shop calmer, and we sure do spend smarter.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking more and more of posing the question whether the term neutral colors, what purpose does the term neutral colors serve? Maybe the term colors suitable for wardrobe basics is better for practical purposes. And it's not necessary to limit yourself to strictly what we call neutrals, although most of us, we do want to have some kind of calm color to build a wardrobe around. But you can build a wardrobe around red or blue as colors as the basics in your wardrobe. Well, we've said this before in other episodes that this series, our little podcast here, our little corner of color analysis world, it's not to limit ourselves, it's to learn how to choose them and use them.
Yeah. I, for one, would love a different word from neutral, because fashion neutral, gray, taupe, brown, it overlaps with neutral seasons, those seasons that are not all warm and then you always have to, I use capital letters for neutral seasons, or I'm always clarifying, no, I mean fashion neutral, no, I mean neutral. I'd like a different word, but neutral is a good word for clothing, for hair, and the colors are season specific, and they're wardrobe necessary. So you just can't get too locked down in how you use them. I guess fashion changes its mind every decade, and so can we. Information wears out. It's not just about fashion. It's you have to replace information with new information, and then some of it lasts and lasts, like the neutral seasons concept, if I may say. Another thought, for colors that I could see acting as neutrals, going back to that a little bit, depending on what they are, maybe not wearing them all together at once, but expands the options, would be our natural hair colors and eye colors. Like, take a selfie, enlarge the image, lay it on your palette, and find the most similar tones. I think some of those would be the coolest neutral colors.
Yes, I think so. I think it's a great idea, that selfie thing. Finally, something useful to use selfies for. Anyway,
Yes.
I often tell clients to use their hair color as a good guide when they're picking neutrals, actually, if they haven't colored their hair. What about using prints in spring neutrals? I think that's a good way to incorporate neutrals, but in a vivacious spring-like manner, with more movement in the pattern. Like, if you can imagine a basic set for the office to be a blazer and a skirt in that milk chocolate brown, and then a blouse with leaf and floral print in pale peachy beige, vanilla ice cream white, and that light khaki gray green. If you could find those prints, a print in those neutrals, I think it would be delicious.
I think it would be lovely too. And something that spring to me benefits in, no matter what they wear, is a lot of movement, a lot of things for the eye to look at and to notice. And print kind of just takes care of that. You get your colors and the movement, two birds, one stone. Well, that's lovely. And I can see the print too, and the fabric of the blouse. They just would really work together, wouldn't they?
Right. It would be a nice way to bring spring energy into a neutral fabric, the prints. Anyway, so moving right along, shall we go through all three of the springs in detail, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with true spring. The keywords here would be juicy. Well, of course, we're in spring. Desserts, sweets. It's not a skinny palette. It's the colors and neutrals of this palette are kind of youthfully plump. Looking for high-calorie neutrals that are sweet and decadent, or dripping with that fruit juice that we talked about earlier. An outfit of rich sweet milk chocolate pants, salty toffee caramel blouse, guacamole khaki gray green belt and ballerina flats, gold necklace, vanilla ice cream jacket, just as an example.
Yeah, that's lovely. The belt and the necklace together have got my attention. Colors that come to my mind for spring: soft egg yolk, yellow beige, rose gold beige, green gold beige. I'm seeing beige a lot. Yes, it's particular. Beige is not brown. I can also really picture it when I look at people's hair, actually. I can see whether it's beige or brown. This isn't a soft beige like when you're shopping with your partner, who wants to go home to their chair, and you pull out a beige pant, and the very helpful comment is, well, that'll go with everything. To which, with your color knowledge, you reply, well, yeah, everything but me. And nothing goes with everything. Could you go have a coffee somewhere or go walk around a car lot? Because when they saw the color, they did not perceive it as a color. With spring, they usually will perceive it as a color.
Well, it's a good point. The true spring beiges have so much yellow or peach in them. Kind of something midway between peach and beige. Not sure that we should have a special name for that. I just couldn't think of one.
Yeah. True spring neutrals, well, we've said they're colorful, even as jeans, which I see as a fashion neutral despite being blue. And I will link, for anyone who's interested, a video on YouTube about blue jeans. You'll see that the blue for true spring jeans is not darker than true summer, it's brighter. And bright means more pigment. Because I keep saying that about bright means more pigment, because we can perceive brightness in places it isn't, like warm color can look bright, or dark color can seem to have more pigment than it does until you compare it with some kind of standard, meaning matching your season palettes or harmonizing to see if the combinations hold up. I definitely see clear dark brown for true spring. I would describe that, what comes to mind, maple syrup to dark beer.
Yeah, yeah. Or agave honey to coconut syrup.
Dark turquoise, like dark teal for autumn, just my opinion, those act as neutrals. Okay, I'm not making an outfit here. I'm glad you did. Neutrals, though, I mean, just like a buffet, walk on up and help yourself. Anything goes with anything, really, I think, quite literally. The effect is vibrant just by the nature of the colors. What I like about your outfit is the large light block. That's one good thing for any spring. Don't go darker than your palette, and large areas of light are very good. It's essentially light coloring. For sure, you can combine dark with dark from your palette, but that effect to me would look more formal, maybe for most seasons, or serious on a spring than if other seasons did that.
Definitely. Even if their darks are really not very dark, combining only darks would look so depressing and draining on a true spring. Well, any spring really, but maybe particularly true spring.
Yeah. Well, since we're real world women, and this is no pretend podcast, spring neutrals took time for me to learn. And they can take time to find. I live in Eastern Canada. I'm sure part of this is regional. As we all do with our season, just start with what's easy for you to recognize and find. And the rest just arrives when your eyes sensitize, your mind just opens and lets it in. It's always been there. You just didn't quite see it that way. Proving the negative, that's useful because there are many you will reject on your way to understanding.
Reject many. That's music to my minimalist ears. You'll save so much money once you realize it's better to wait until the right color is back in the shops and then pounce.
Yeah, color that you're confident you can work with. True spring could also easily expand their options with light springs, darker grays, mole browns. If they look close and the colors work, it's probably a fine choice.
Yep. Well, since you mentioned it, let's go on to talk about light spring. I'll go first, imagining a light spring outfit. I'll conjure up a cold winter outfit, since that is number one topic of 95% of the questions I get from light springs, well, and light summers. How to dress as their season in the cold time of year. Let's imagine a winter outfit of a light peachy beige wool coat, a darker apricot beige scarf, beige, bordering on caramel, milk chocolate colored ankle boots and bag. And then in the real world, if you weren't doing a challenge to only use neutrals, why not toss in a coral knitted hat?
Sure. Light spring. Spring with summer, more spring. Light spring is the lightest spring. It's brilliant that you made the light area bigger than it was in your true spring outfit. What color are the pants or skirt, though? Maybe a chipmunk in honor of my spirit animal. I don't really have a spirit animal, but let's say my energy has been compared to chipmunks, and we have these really pretty kind of rosy brown chipmunks here.
Oh, chipmunk as your adopted spirit animal. That's so adorable. It's so cute. Well, anyway, I think my spirit animal, let's just go off on a little tangent here. I think my spirit animal would be a squirrel hopping along with a bushy tail. easily distracted by snacks and always forgetting where she stashed her
This could be why
acorn.
we get along. If
Yeah,
I'm a squirrel and you're a chip, we're related.
I know. We can sit and share acorns.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. Well, or red wine anyway. Um, I'm gonna throw this back to you. I'm done with my spirit animal chat now. Let's hear what you suggest for skirts or trousers for this cold weather. Remember, it's a cold weather light spring outfit.
I will try. You're asking me to remember a lot of things at the same time. One of my mind with light spring neutrals always goes back to an experience I had with a client a few years ago. Still very front of my mind. One of the prettiest combinations that I've seen. And it was just drapes, so we weren't looking at actual clothes. And yet the colors together were one of those more than words can say moments. Coconut shell brown, a floaty peach beige fabric like conch shell, and then their shimmery French vanilla ice cream white. So really beautiful. So I'm going to say for your outfit, coconut shell brown skirt. There.
Good choice.
Yeah. I was walking the other day with a friend, and she had on these translucent plastic rose gold sunglasses, light medium, kind of pinkish orange, brown, tan color. Her hair was the same color, now has a lot of similar silver in it, but you can see the similar tones. Oh, it's gorgeous. And the glasses were the same color as her freckles. And I have no idea where the color is in the various palettes, maybe around the darker of the rose beiges in the neutrals, but it qualified as a neutral to me for being such a part of her face. Like we said earlier about your natural eye colors, sometimes those just are neutrals for you. And like the sunglasses, they could have grown there all by themselves. The clear plastic too, it really improved them. A little bit shiny, a little bit transparent in the bars. And the lens, I really noticed sunglasses lenses because it's the biggest front-facing part of many glasses, was that khaki pine green for light spring. I mean, these were from Old Navy. I bet you they cost less than $15.
That's a great tip. Well, I see you're wandering away from the cold weather outfit despite my little hints. Speaking of this sunshine that I know so little of, carry on.
Yes. You mean it's cloudy in Norway these days?
No, actually, it's nice and sunny.
No. Well, I can tell you it is cloudy and cold in Prince Edward Island and has been for days. Sheesh. Okay, yes, of course I wandered away from a winter outfit. See, if you give me specific instructions,
Yeah, you hop along in the
just
outfit.
can't do it. How about an outfit? Okay, I'm going to challenge myself. Neutrals only and no white, because I always pick white. Not for being easy. It's just that my eyes literally feel happy when I see people in a great white. So the top is silvery pearly taupe from the palette, barely recognizable as summer. And the jacket is mole brown. Really like that color very much. It's quite rich, and it's not really remotely coffee or tea. You'd find it in the peaches image, actually. The lower edge, in the shadow, in the fork of the branch, it's that color. And you see what I mean by sunlight, even in the shadows, how yellow light reflects out? Really, really lovely eyeshadow as well.
Oh, yes. I love a mold brown eyeshadow, and it's divine on light spring.
Really, it is. Yeah, green eyes, brown eyes, it's just gorgeous. Okay, back to the outfit. That light green, they have a light green, but it's not like soup green or olive green. Let's say you take pistachio green and then put 1 or 2 drops of twig brown. It's that color, and it's a scarf. And then it has threads of gold woven in because it's my outfit and I can make it anything. This is my store. I can put anything on the shelves that I think of.
Yeah. Yes, including inserting sunglasses into the cold weather.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's exactly right. Now, I'm a real firm believer in the things you hold in your mind start moving towards us, so you got to be selective about that stuff. Okay, what else? I'm breaking a sweat trying to keep on track here, but I'm going to do it. Light beige canvas shoes, which I was really taken with in our previous episode about soft summer, but here they're not really like antique white, pardon me, antique white. They're like on the whipped cream to Rice Krispies spectrum lineup. And then if you enjoy hair highlights, actually, many light springs could take the neutral set, that Rice Krispies color, to the yellow or beige. Show your hair colorist, because often colorists, I find they get the color too light and too cool in the highlights, especially if that person looks like a summer.
Really? It's not my experience with hairdressers. I find that most often the problem is the other way around, that the hair colors struggle to make hair color cool enough. And if they do, that it kind of, the color changes over a short time to something warmer, kind of yellower and more coppery than it was right away. Interesting.
It is. I know what you mean too. I have seen that several times as well. That's interesting. Another good color analogy for the hair is golden toasted white bread. I like that one too, because it prevents the imagination from getting too light. You know, you think light spring and then the hair just gets too platinum. It looks too sharp. It's funny, you know, neutrals, they fit into appearance in so many ways besides clothing. It's the same color, but you're wearing it in a different way. Eyeliner, another big one. Although in light spring, I have to say I prefer grays and greens. Mauve brown is terrific if you can get it. Just be careful, because browns can get too dark or too red, and it really makes these eyes look irritated. Okay, bright spring. What are we going to give them, Yarn?
Yes, well, what are we going to give them? Let's give them a dark brown skirt, the darkest brown on the Bright Spring fan, rich milk chocolate brown tights, soft jersey knit tunic, the color of white tahini, and then repeat the warm milk chocolate brown in a soft pashmina around the neck, and then top it off with a long jade bead necklace interspersed with gray black lava rocks. This is my outfit, and I can do whatever I want.
I mean, that's a gorgeous outfit that I would think by just changing the colors slightly, any spring could adapt and be really comfortable and warm. So yeah, bright spring, let me think. Spring with winter, more spring. That white tahini, that was really good. And lava rock, I mean, it was exciting just to hear it. Winter is here. Neutrals have less color pigment compared with colors. The grays are more steely, more, let's say, surgical blade grays. Darker grays are getting closer to charcoal. It's just a little harder to see what color is in them.
Yes, definitely. Bright Spring is the spring palette with the most grays in the strip.
My favorite of the Bright Spring neutrals is their light shimmery beige. It's halfway between light gold and silver. It's one step darker than the palette white. Really good. And also metallic khaki or olive. It's this saturated yellow, green, brown. If you search brown diamond or some variation, olive diamond or deep brown, green diamond, it's an interesting jewel tone because winter is here. Jewel tones are starting to come in and find their way into spring, even in neutral colors. It is an awesome color. You might only find it in some palettes, might only be in corporate palettes. You know, come to think of it, it's a lot like strong green tea.
Well, strong green tea. Couldn't get away, could we?
Couldn't do it. It's like a Post-it note up there. There's nothing I can do.
But it's such an important image. It
is a good one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, brown diamonds. I had to go and Google that after we started talking about this episode, and they are beautiful.
Yeah. Interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, never thought of it. I was actually thinking that they would look really nice on autumns as well. Much better than those cool blue regular diamonds. Listen to me. Makes me think of a quote from Eva Gabor. All any girl needs at any time is simple velvet and basic diamonds.
Yeah, and she doesn't say what color the diamonds are, so.
No, basic diamonds, any color.
Good for her. She was right. So it turns out she was exactly right.
Yep.
What challenges me here in Bright Spring neutrals is that the light warm grays, the light grays, can be greenish and get into soft autumn, kind of like sunflower seed colors. The light cool grays can be a little bluish and look sort of summary. So start with those colors and what seems like a good match in your palette, and then try them with the colors.
Yeah, we're back to that. Make sure they harmonize with your colors and you're good to go. And the point that we repeat ad nauseam is to harmonize it with the whole fan. Don't get hung up with each color. If the gray doesn't look steely or metallic next to your colors, if the neutrals don't look too bland or milky next to the colors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you just don't want them to change one another, or not in a way that they suddenly look like a whole different color. If they seem to fade, they get dull next to bright spring colors. They only fade a little. You don't see a change. Maybe they're just fine. I mean, we just want to get out the door every day looking well. That's what I want to do. I'm not passing through a color precision filter. And, in my original luxury drapes back in 2009, quite a few beiges in the bright spring fabrics were soft autumn and true autumn, and they made perfectly good bright spring outfits. Wool, twill, gabardine, those colors in those fabrics, they often fall into autumn, and they still work. You wouldn't find them in the luxury drapes today, but there was an awful lot of learning for having them in the original sets. Making an outfit can bring to mind a bright spring person, usually not very dark overall in natural appearance, lots of variation in skin tone, eye, and particular hair colors. Well, you know what I find surprising about bright spring? The amount of contrast that looks amazing. The winter voice is definitely here. Might not be obvious in the overall coloring or what looks like the natural contrast level, but is it ever here? And the top in this outfit is the second to darkest gray satin fabric, kind of like charcoal with a shimmery spray on it.
A spray of swamp water green, perchance?
Yeah, perchance that's not bad at all. That's a good visual, as we need to add warmth and light. And because that's what all spring essentially is. So the pants, they're white, and then a few drops of dandelion yellow got mixed in. And a good way to gauge this, find a pure white something in the store. You can almost always find that, or online, and then hold them side by side. And that yellow-green tinge will come out at you. You'll see that. I need one more thing. I like movement rather than just two solid color blocks. It shows that agility, the quick directional change with color that is often present in the natural coloring. You'll see dark hair, bright skin. You'll see intense amber and blue eyes. So what are we going to add?
Perhaps add a metallic shoe?
Love metallic shoes. Yes, that would be good if the person's up for it. Shoes, let's call this intense butterscotch. I think of it intense carrot, intense ginger, intense butterscotch is like a varnished guitar kind of color. Person not up for that much color in footwear, dark brown ankle boot is great. And I like shine in everything. Shiny metals in the accessories. So we have, let's say, a bracelet with silver, gold, and navy blue beads. Because in this outfit, blue can be a neutral in other places than jeans, and it adds movement to neutrals. Joran, I think that brings us to the end of our Spring Neutrals episode. And thank you so much to everyone for having been with us throughout this year. And I hope you enjoy your holiday if that's coming in the next 2 months.
Yes, and if I may suggest some summer entertainment, why not sign up for my new project, which I'm very proud of. It's a 2-week email series where I take outrageous fashion outfits from around the world and I dissect and tweak them so that they can be worn by real people in real life. You can sign up at scandinavianstyleacademy.com. There's a link in the show notes. And like Christine says, thank you so much for listening and have a lovely summer.